There is a distance in the light, vibrations of a thundercloud. There is a distance in the light, frozen bed of snow-capped heights. There is a distance in the light, vibration of a thundercloud.
Hello, loved ones. This is Matt Stevens, Clive, and Dom with the Breaking My Addictions podcast and My Sober Addiction podcast. And of course, dear loved ones, I am not going to forget, we are happy, we are healthy, we are wealthy, we are loved, and we are free. And we are continuing our discussions. How are you guys?
Really good. And yeah, just continuing on from the past episodes, you know, we've been talking about sort of family values. We've been talking about what your addiction's trying to tell you. We've been talking about identity within addiction. And so today, I think talking about religion, spirituality, and how that links with our mindsets. And also, you know, whether religion can be a bit of an addiction, or whether thinking patterns can be an addiction, or whether we seek addictions when those thinking patterns and those beliefs don't quite sit right with us and we're trying to find different answers, maybe. You know, that's kind of what I'm interested in, because I think religion and spirituality can do a lot of good if used correctly, but I think also can cause a lot of confusion and division when they are misused.
Well, see, you know, when we first started talking about this, an old saying came to mind, and there is some dispute over who said it first, who gets credit for it, whatever. I mean, and it's like, whatever, I don't know. But it is, you know, religion is for people who are afraid of hell. Spirituality are for those who have already lived through it. Now, I realize that can be offensive to people. I understand that. I do. But I also understand that for when people who have been through addiction, they tend to, for me, spirituality works far more than religion ever did. You know, that's all. And I found spirituality after, and in some ways because of addiction, you know, but there are those who find religion because of it. And that's one thing Dom was starting to touch on is, you know, like with the anonymous groups and how they're lean into religion and stuff. Dom, what are your you were beginning to talk about that when we were discussing this episode?
Yeah, I'm fascinated about how different faiths have different effects on people, and I got a bit of I suppose a little bit of a unique perspective, because I did a lot of traveling when I was younger, and one thing I'd always do when I'd go to different countries was ask people what they believed in. I mean, you know, how do they feel that we got here, and you know, how did their faith help them with their lives? You know, I slept on Shiva temple floors. I did Vipassana meditation courses. I grew up in you could say an Irish Catholic family, so I experienced what the guilt perspective was about and things like that. And I grew up in an area of London with a lot of Hasidic Jewish people. In fact, the area I grew up in had the most Hasidic Jewish people outside of New York. And I can see how different people react in different circumstances. And it's almost as if I carried on doing that, experimenting, because you know, there were times in my life when, you know, I've drunk too much booze. I've always tended to see it as a bit of a choice of mine. I always chose to go out and drink a lot, and that could have certain ramifications, but you know, I tended to believe that was a decision that I made. But I did actually go to AA meetings for a year, because a girlfriend of mine, she went to regular meetings, and I thought, well, I'm going to go and check them out, find out what that's about. And I did really see it as, I saw it as I'm going to do this for a year, and then you know, make some decisions about whether it was worth just continuing as a community. And I experienced all sorts of things. I mean, there were men hanging out there who were just waiting for vulnerable people to come along, and so that they could make use of their vulnerability. There were, I mean, you know, that was quite serious. I mean, it was serious. I actually had a confrontation with someone because it was quite obvious what they were doing, and due to the rules of AA, nobody felt that they could actually do anything about it. So I actually had let's say strong words with that person outside of the establishment. But I could also see that there was a very Catholic or religious guilt. I mean, you couldn't say it was necessarily Catholic, but there was that guilt involved. People felt that they were going along because they were doing something that was so unbelievably naughty, and then this religious organization was going to fix them because, that's what, the more Christian faith tells you, that you've got, a God who's looking down and repairing your ills. And I did wonder because, one person that had a lot to do with AA was Carl Jung. And I know that he was interested in Sufism or Islam because his father was very interested in Islam. And it made me go down the road of wondering if it was actually the 12 steps that helped was based on Sufism. And then I found out that actually there was another religious group called the Oxford Group. So it is quite complex. But in Islam, you do have what they call stations that you go through as an ascent through your journey, your religious purpose. But there's no guilt involved.
I think there's a really good point, though, talking about guilt and addiction. And some religions are particularly good at bestowing guilt and shame on people. And I think, we've mentioned, the Catholic religion, and also the Jewish religion, I believe, is also quite good at looking at shame as a kind of tool for sculpting people. And, I think personally, when you're not feeling at peace, when you feel a certain dis-ease in yourself, you are more likely to choose things that could be unhealthy. It could be eating more donuts than you should do, or smoking cigarettes, or alcohol, or masturbation, or gambling, or just something that provides the dopamine, something that provides the moment. And I actually heard someone talk about this, saying that they believe that a lot of addictions are about finding that almost spiritual moment, like that moment where the mind just goes at peace and just goes, bliss, and it could be the second that you've bit into the donut, or, when you've snorted a line of something, or, that could be the moment where you experience that, kind of like Christmas time, that feeling of being a child and everything being carefree. If you've had that feeling, I mean, a lot of children don't have that these days. I was very fortunate. I had moments in my childhood that were very carefree and blissful. And I did not come from a religious family. I came from a family where my mum was ultra religious until she went to university, and then suddenly lost all faith and got very confused by it. So I was brought up in a family where, as well, believe what you want to believe. You'll work it out, I'm sure. And in some respects, that was quite helpful, but it was also confusing because I lived in a world, like school put hymns down our throat, and we were taught in religious schools, and religion was a very big part of our upbringing, even though I didn't particularly believe in it, and my parents didn't seem to believe in it. And what I could see was division. I could see people believe in lots of different things, and then even within that, you've got people believing in the Christian religion, some people believe in the Jewish background, some people the Islamic, and it's like, we've all been divided, and we can't all be right at the same time, presumably. So either 99% of religions are wrong and one is right, or they're all got bits of right and wrong in them. And why can't I pick between the two? And I remember going to a Christian meeting with my friend in sixth form because he wanted to pull one of the girls there. And basically, I just went in and with him as a friend, and I just said, yeah, well, I don't believe in heaven or hell and stuff, and does that mean I'm going there? And they went, well, yes. I'm like, okay. And I don't think those kind of things help me feel part of a larger world community where I felt I belonged. And then you find other ways of belonging. You go and hang out with your stoner friends. You go and hang out in the pubs. You find little niches of areas where you feel like you are aligned. And I don't feel aligned with extremely religious people. I can get on with them much better nowadays, but I don't feel completely aligned.
Well, see, since I was also raised Catholic, and I was actually an altar boy. That's a little fun fact about Matt, I guess. But, and then as I got into young adult, I kind of moved away from it. And then I still stayed at Christianity and went kind of the non-denominational route. But then some things happened in my life, and then addiction came in, and of course, nothing mattered at that point. Heroin was my religion at that point. That's just how it was. And then I had that experience where, whether was it a near death experience, I can't prove either way. I feel like I was definitely not in my body. And according to the paramedics, they're working on me, based on what they've said, there's a very good chance I wasn't. But I mean, there's no way to know. I just know what I experienced. And what I experienced was very spiritual, but it was very much not religious. And that's one of the things about religion is that I find fascinating is it's programming. I mean, it's mental programming, but it's like when you talk to other people who have near death experiences, and mine was kind of different because I did not experience what I had been programmed to believe I would. But it's like if you talk to a Catholic or just a Christian in general, and they have a near-death experience, they're going to report to you that they experienced, maybe Jesus or something. They're gonna come back with a story that reflects their religious background. But then again, if you talk to someone who is, say, Muslim, they're going to tell you that they maybe met Muhammad, or in a lot of cases, their family, or whatever. But the point is, and then in Hindu, I can't remember the name, but there is the god of death and his helpers or whatever, and that a lot of Hindus will report back that they encountered this entity, but the point is they will have these experiences, and then when they that are near death or whatever the case may be, and when then they come back, they report back whatever it is that their background was. So all of them will come back and be like, well, I'm right. Like a Christian will come back and be like, hey, I met Jesus, and obviously the Christian faith is correct. But then you'll have the Hindu say, I don't know about that because I had an experience also, and I experienced this. So to me, I'm just like, okay, so that's just religious programming. But the whole spirituality part of, like with my experience, I didn't experience anything. I experienced what you would call the void. It was just black, but it wasn't scary at all. It was just, it just what it was. It was formless, and it was beautiful, and it put me on a kind of a quest afterward. And I guess maybe that kind of became my new addiction. It's like I've got to figure out what that was that I experienced, because it certainly wasn't what I was programmed to believe. It wasn't heaven or hell.
But this is it. This is what a lot of people experience, for example, reportedly with ayahuasca and DMT, for example, or even magic mushrooms, psilocybin, which are being used a lot more therapeutically now for PTSD and addictions. I believe legally in Canada they're used, and ketamine therapy as well in Canada. And again, obviously, we're not recommending anyone go down these routes. But the interesting thing is that people using these seem to experience a spiritual experience. They experience something they describe as being more real and actually spiritual. But like you say, not like your standard idea of God or whatever, a bright light, a feeling of love, a feeling of unity, a feeling of unified, consciousness that seems more real than what we have. And, what I find interesting about that is that people who have that experience quite often then seem to then be humbled and put their lives in perspective and are able to let go of things like the drinking and stuff. Almost like it provides a larger sense of clarity that wasn't there before. And for me, I feel that addictions often rise from confusion, and shame rises from confusion and addiction, and then shame will lead back to more confusion, more addiction, and it's a bit of a vicious circle. And as far as I can see, treating people as a flawed spiritual person rather than as an individual trying to figure stuff out, it can be quite damaging. And there are reports that, religions that use shame as a control method they induce almost PTSD style symptoms in people. They're really can be very psychologically damaging. And again, going back to the Catholics, it might be a beautiful religion with beautiful ideas, but it created a lot of really messed up people. I mean, I'm just looking at the figures. The figures for France is reckoned between 1950 and now 2020, the over 3,000 clergy in France abused up to 220,000 children. I mean, that's staggering. Like that for a religion, you'd expect a few bad apples in a religion, but to consistently create so many messed up people, and we're going from complete abstinence and complete purity of thought, which I believe is quite unrealistic, to complete perversion and abuse. And I would say the middle ground is possibly healthier, and maybe we should all embrace that a little bit more.
Certain other faiths right now that seem to be murdering children directly, don't they? Passing the middleman,
Well, no, you could argue that is not the faith doing that. That's a political organisation acting underneath the banner of that faith. And again, this is where religions get corrupted and publicised wrong. And then as a subject of that nation, you're made to believe that if you don't follow the governmental corrupted lines of it, that you are spiritually failing, that you're not following the government, Whereas actually, if we stood up and actually went for what we truly believed in our core rather than what we're being told, then maybe we'd stand a better chance of working together, maybe.
But the Gnostics, they do have a, I guess a theory, or a belief system around what you had just mentioned as far as, ritual abuse and things like that. Not that they promote it. They actually absolutely do not promote it, but they've got they can explain why people do those types of things, and no, it's not okay and it's not good, but it's like, look, people do these things because of this. And like I said, I'm just wanted to point that out, that the Gnostics have, I'm not going to say they've got it figured out. I don't think anybody has it figured out, but they've definitely got a theory behind the whole ritual abuse stuff.
But this is it. The fear is that we start to believe in that becomes part of our operating systems. And I know, like the Gnostics, for example, might believe that the God that rules over us is the demiurge, and actually he's very imperfect, and actually creating us to live in a kind of hell down here that we're continually tested. That, as a construct, as a story, is quite interesting, and it actually enables you to explore, to be a little bit imperfect, and to find ways of being better. And I actually like that idea, rather than you should be absolutely perfect. Yeah. And if you mess up at all, then you're going to be, guilted and shamed, and therefore outcasted, and more likely to continue doing what you're doing, but hiding it and being very dysfunctional about it. And this is it. Like religion, when you're religioning right, and you're in a good religious community that's supportive and not messed up, then apparently it's quite a protective factor. But for example, if you are a gay person in an orthodox or a very strict religious situation, your chance of suicide goes up to like 93% contextually. It's just huge. The shift in it is just phenomenal. Yeah. I don't know if I've got that figure right. I did find the figure earlier, but it's a huge shift from it being protective to actually creating mental health issues. And I don't think a loving God would want to be creating mental health issues in people who are struggling. Is that how religion should be working? I don't know. Obviously, some religions do seem to work that way. Being curious is an amazing thing, whether you believe it or not. I might be a strict Christian, but be interested in Islam and the Gnostics and Buddhism and spirituality. And there's actually a YouTube series at the moment where this guy goes off and experiences 6 major different religions and sees what he can learn from each. And he learns some beautiful things within each. And he's genuinely surprised. He's like, oh my God, yeah, that is beautiful. That really helped me, because he's looking for the good bits. If you were looking for the damaging bits, you'd probably see those bits. But if you're caught within it as a child, and especially if you're being raised by people who are confused by it as well. This whole idea of, for example, this might be a very controversial thing to say, but for teenage or young adult men not to ever masturbate at all or self-pleasure is probably an unrealistic expectation. Probably, to get to the age of 50 without ever knocking one off is
Right.
probably unrealistic.
That's one of the
especially-
that's one of the things I've always said. It's one of the great things about getting older is I'm good. But when I was in my teens and 20s, yeah, you're absolutely right. I had to. So I thought,
And even I did it once or twice.
Well, sure.
I
think Dom's doing it now.
But yeah, again, should someone who does do that, should they experience such shame and guilt? Not that it doesn't stop them doing it, that it almost drives it into secrecy, and it drives it into shame, and it drives it into psychological damage about identity.
Yeah.
And that, to me, I think is a crying shame, because I don't think any God would wish to do that to anyone. Like that. That's the bit that I'm trying to get my head around. But as a control structure, I think people will use religion to control the population, to make people feel vulnerable, to make them feel imperfect, to make them feel less powerful, to make them feel less whole. And then they are more ripe for other forms of addiction. I mean, that sounds like a huge conspiracy, but I just, I think it needs exploring.
That's how you would beat someone into subservience is, really, and I know that we may be getting a little dark here, and I mean, we definitely are, but that is one way to beat someone into subservience, so that they will just fall in line, because it's like they're too damn fearful not to. It's like, don't go explore, don't go do this, don't go do that, because you're going to pay for it if you do. And anyway, but I have found that spirituality, kind of bringing it back around, spirituality to me, I mean, I kind of joke and say it's my new addiction, and I definitely would consider myself to be a seeker. I think both of you are definitely seekers. For Dom particularly, I mean, he's always researching and looking into all the different things, but I mean, it turned me into a seeker, and I think that that's a good thing. I do, because now I'm looking at everything from every angle. I definitely have my belief system, and it's just broadened, if anything. I mean, I don't think I feel like kind of like the difference between faith and gnosis. Gnosis is a knowing, and it's like, if you have faith, that's fine, that's cool, but it's like, I have faith that God is real. Okay, that's cool. But it's like, no, I know God's real. Not a doubt in my mind. I don't have to have faith. I know this, but maybe it's just mixing more, potato and potato. I don't know. You have any thoughts on this, Dom?
Yeah. I've been enjoying the chit chat, actually, listening, and I was thinking that it's a bit dangerous. I mean, my mind was saying, well, I do have some ideas of what faiths that you might call religions are more useful, and I thought, well, it's not very useful to be able to start pushing those on people. People have got to deal with what they have, haven't they? Really. I mean, I'd say that one thing that it'd be useful for people to understand is that there are some faiths that don't necessarily want society to work, and that's difficult for people to understand. People tend to have this almost like childlike idea until we get to a point where we go, oh, hang on a minute, maybe this is being done on purpose. And but the easiest thing to do when we realize that is to say, okay, well, I'll leave that behind and then find my own way. But the only issue with that is that you might be living within a society that people are just doing completely different things. So then you're a bit of like a fish out of water. I mean, I felt like that in all sorts of situations, especially when living abroad, for instance. You live in other countries and you're often surrounded by a lot of what people call expats, and they tend to be people who've retired. And one thing they do from your so-called Western societies is they just end up finding ways to drink lots of booze together. I mean, that's what expats tend to do. The dream of their working life was, oh my God, one day I can just sit there and just get baked in sun and drink nothing but booze. And that's not necessarily something I want. Right. So you do have to actually end up making your own path. And I think that's the important thing. Let's make our own path. and or find some people that we really do work with.
I think that's the thing. I mean, like, talking about spirituality, you're recognizing your own spirit and what you value inside, regardless of religion. I mean, I believe that I'm not particularly religious, but I believe in the good fundamental aspects of most religions, as in being kind to each other, being honest, being truthful, being, those things sit very well with me. And I believe that there's quite a lot of universality amongst the religions. And actually, we can choose to believe in all the good bits and still not necessarily believe or follow a particular religion. And that is my choice. And for me, I want to be quite happy with that choice. I'm not going to feel bad about it. And luckily, I don't have anyone around me making me feel bad about it. And that has made my transition into being myself and, living a better life easier now that I now kind of live by that. And I feel quite settled in myself. And I think that has been a good journey. And I think that is a spiritual journey, because we're recognizing our own spirit, our own values, and we're developing. And I think this life is about learning, and, the challenges and the confusions that we have, we either repeat them again and again and again, or we learn from them, and they're learning opportunities. And, I don't wish challenge and hardship on anyone. But if you have challenge and hardship, it's there, and it's showing you something. It's showing you don't want that, and you want something else, or you don't want that for other people if you can't get rid of it for yourself. And again, learning, I can change this, but I can't change that. Therefore, I've got to accept it. For me, I think has been a massive part of my addiction journey, is actually shifting my perspective of what I can change and what I can't change. And again, that has been more guided by spirituality than religion, because religion seems to teach you about, ways to act and what you should do. It doesn't necessarily always instruct you on helpful ways of thinking to keep your own sanity and to naturally make good choices. Like you were saying earlier, Matt, if you fear doing something, if you don't do it because you're scared of the consequences, you're not choosing not to do it for the right reasons,
Right.
You should choose not to do something that seems wrong because you can see it's wrong, not because some all-seeing being is looking over going, that's really naughty and you shouldn't be doing that.
Right.
What's that about?
Right. From my NDE experience, whatever, that kind of did put me on a quest. And I did look at a lot of different religions, and a book that I can recommend is a book called Advice on Dying. And it was written by the 14th Dalai Lama. Amazing book, and like, I am certainly not a Buddhist. Okay. But I can honestly tell you that I believe, just by, after that experience, it put me, I was like, what was that? What was that? Because it's certainly not what I expected. So what was it? And it put me on a quest, I suppose, to find out. And I still haven't figured it out. But nonetheless, I learned a lot about a lot of other faiths or religions or whatever, spirituality, learned a lot about myself. And, like, for example, Buddhism is beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. I have no interest in being a Buddhist. I don't, because there's a lot of things about it I do not like. But I feel like I would probably be very nihilistic if I were to go that way. And that's certainly not what I want to do. However, but the book Advice on Dying, if somebody is looking for a book to read, it's a fantastic book. It's amazing. And there's some parts in it that'll blow your mind, really. But anyway, Buddhism is beautiful. It is. It's not for me, but it's beautiful, and nonetheless, and I can still learn some things from it, and I have, and I just kind of, I guess I've learned to kind of take a few bits from here and here, but at the core, I mean, I am what I am, so, and there's going to be some people that be like, well, you can't really do that because of this or that, I mean, but that's kind of them being judgmental and comparing me to what they believe for themselves. And I'm like, it's, well, I guess one of these days maybe we'll find out. I don't know, but
Can I just kind of jump in there with an example of the Buddhist thing? Is I might have mentioned it before, but there was a pub in a town I lived in Yorkshire that was really successful, and it was successful because it was run by an English guy and a Thai woman, and the Thai woman's a Buddhist, and she had a little shrine there. She would bring monks in to pray, and there's little festivals when different things happened there. But the basic thing was her very Buddhist idea of sharing. I mean, she was just shared with everyone, and I mean, from the heart. It was a wonderful thing. But can I suggest a thing that we could do just to roll this off, actually, which will be perfect, because I think you've already mentioned this, is the Serenity Prayer, which is something that is part of the AA, or Alcoholics Anonymous, that is the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
That's one of the that's. I don't want to say it's perfect, but it's pretty darn close. It really is. It really is, because courage and wisdom, and it's got, you definitely need to know the difference, because so many people try to change. So many people either try to change everything, even the things they cannot, or they don't do anything and they don't change anything, even the things that they can. It's like finding the balance, I guess, is what's important, and that's where the Serenity Prayer comes in. It's looking for the balance to know when I can change things and when I can't, and then of course having the courage to do it.
And again, Desiderate as well, which I've shared before in the group. I think that's an amazing poem, and it takes that kind of acceptance of how the world is, and that it can be full of trickery and corruption, but it's also full of beauty. And it depends where you look and how you look. I mean, I can turn the news on every day and see disaster, corruption, and death and murder. Or I can go for a walk in the countryside and see animals doing that to each other, insects doing it. I see beauty. I do see beauty. But
right.
It is a cruel world out there at times. But that's just as it is. And we took my daughter to go and see a film, and it was about this beaver and the habitat and stuff. It was amazing, like animation. And there was a bit in it where the just this bear swoops in and just grabs hold of something, and the beaver goes, "No, you can't, let go of it," and it drops it down, and the thing that got released from its mouth just goes, "Hey, what are you doing? Law of the pond. He caught me. He's allowed to eat me. It's just how it goes. It's fine. What have you done? You've messed it up. That's not how it works."
Right.
And that acceptance that actually, if you're going to be eaten, you could do your best to try and get away, but you might just get eaten.
Right.
Why get upset about it? If it's going to happen, if you're going to get thrown to the lions, you might as well, have a little fight and then go, If you can't change it, you might as well roll with it and go out like a Hollywood hero, maybe. I don't know.
I thought the Serenity Prayer was a better thing to end on than that.
The Desiderate, if anyone goes and looks up Desiderate as well, you will find a slightly better view than how I just explained it.
It's a wonderful, wonderful poem. I think they kept British private school educated boys just together in the empire for a long time, that one.
One thing I want to point, I'm going to end with this, but one thing I do want to point out is, we do talk an awful lot about how things going on in the world or things going on just around us really bother us. But one thing we have to remember, and this is something that I've definitely learned, through my seeking, is that if we're here, if we learn one thing in this life, it's polarity. And you can't have this without that. You can't have up without down. You can't have hot without cold. So it's like, should I have an appreciation for the negative things? I mean, I wouldn't necessarily go that far as to say I should have an appreciation for it, but I do understand that those are necessary. That they have to exist so that the opposite can exist, so that beauty can exist. Something horrific has to exist somewhere so that beauty can exist. And I know that's, some people are like, I don't know. I'm not saying we should appreciate the bad thing, the negative, but we do accept that, that must be there, just allow it to be.
I'm not so sure about that, Matt. For example, if I throw a party, I don't have to insist that for it to be a good party, that bad things have got to happen in that party.
Well, yeah, I get what you're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, on that, but I mean, I guess I'm talking on a much grander scale here.
Yeah. If we make every day a party, then we can maybe negate that a little
right.
bit.
But I mean, it's like if one animal's eating another animal, it's like, look, I'm just trying to survive. And it's like, yeah, explain that, explain that to the rabbit, because I don't think the rabbit I don't think the rabbit's looking at things the way you are.
I just a wonderful theory earlier today of quantum survival, which is that if any with quantum theory says that any outcome is happening at the same time. So your life is going in any outcome you want. And what you do is you get on the bus that you decide to get on. I'm going to go to the bus to a nice place, or the bus to shit hole, a hole.
That's fine.
I'm sorry for that term, but in a way that proves that there is no death, because you're always on the bus that survives. But the reason we see death and stuff like that happening around us is because it does happen on the quantum scale, but it just doesn't happen to the life that we lead, because otherwise we would be dead. And I thought that's a very interesting theory. That one, I've been thinking about that one today.
Yeah, just to round off, I'm going back to religion. I've just got this written down here that every tradition that has helped anyone, be it religious, spiritual, therapeutic, communal, it's done the same thing. It gave people belonging, meaning, and a moment of peace from the noise of being themselves. And it's saying that is not complicated, it's human. And addiction was trying to get you there too sometimes. It just had the wrong directions. That people are not broken, and that we're generally looking for the right things. And actually, if we're supporting each other, we start to make better decisions, like the Rat Park, in a better environment, a more supportive, communal kind of area, we actually tend to make better decisions. And I think we can all do our bit to make that for ourselves and for the people around us.
Yeah, I like it. So anyway, that's what we got for you. We love you. We will be back directly.
I spent too much time chasing the darkness of my mind, fighting battles that don't belong. That injustice mine to own grows the seeds that I now sow. No need to rewind or to outrun, solve the war of what's been done. Present here I carry on, stronger, stronger. Sometimes I gave too much, so much I could not be free. But hold the lessons, every fight has brought me here. And I am thankful, I am me. I break the chains of old routines, break the dreams of thinking that I can't take the steps to make me whole. When you won't right your wrongdoings of the past, but I am free at last, stronger. I turned my dreams to faded whispers till I chose to make them real. Through courage and small actions, I learned how to succeed. Humility and new routines, embracing imperfection. I grow inside to mend, no longer bend your world to my direction. Stronger, I start to feel it in myself. Stronger, no need to rewind or to outrun, solve the war of what's been done. Present here I carry on, stronger. I've learned to value what's in my hands, flow to peace, not fight, and stand so much stronger. Every